what is the biggest need for the youth? And when I say the biggest need for the youth, I didn't mean the youth of our church only, but the youth right now, modern day youth. What is one of their biggest challenges? And for that matter, what is the biggest challenges, or what are the biggest challenges of the church youth? Mental health is a very big problem. And when we talk about mental health, the biggest of them all is depression. Most of the time we hear a lot about anxiety and depression. But as a church youth, I don't know, for some reason, a lot of us think that when you talk about depression, or if you even say you're depressed, it is a taboo or it's sinful. So it is not a topic that we talk a lot about, especially among the youth. Number two, even if we talk about it, we often hear the idea that if you are depressed, go get treated, which is not a bad thing. Definitely, if you are sick, you need to be treated. But just getting treated for a mental health issue is not the solution. The solution is to really get deeper and understand what exactly is going on. Because if I can prevent a problem, I'll be better off than waiting to get a problem and then try to seek treatment for it. And so our approach to depression, I said mental health, but today we are just going to focus on depression, because that is the one that seems to be the most devastating among the mental health issues that we face today. So even when we talk about depression, the emphasis is on the end stage, at the last minute, when the person has already developed the depression, and then we encourage them to seek treatment, which is a good thing. But today, what I want us to focus on is to really understand what depression is. I'm not going to be too scientific with jargons and I'm not going to be too medically detailed. I just want to break it down so we will understand exactly what we are talking about when we say somebody is depressed. What do I look for? What are the signs? What are the things that are going on that will make me know that somebody or I myself am depressed? And then, are there any things that cause these depressive symptoms? What are the causes? Because if you know the cause of a problem, that is half of the solution. So we are going to look at understanding what depression is, what are the signs and symptoms, and then we'll look at what are the major causes of depression. And then after we have looked at that, right there within the causes, we would understand how to prevent them. And then how to overcome it if we are depressed. The reason why this is very important is that right now, globally around the world, according to the World Health Organization, there are 300 million people who struggle with depression. 300 million. And if you think of the population of the US, the whole of the US, we are just a little over 330, 340 million. And so basically, the population of the size of the entire United States is going through depression worldwide. And that is a big number. And I am definitely sure that you know someone who is depressed or who has been depressed before. So like I said, because this is such an important problem that affects so many people, we are going to look at certain simple things that can help us to prevent it so that we don't fall victim, so we don't become a statistic, so we don't become one of these 300 million people. So like I said, I'm not going to use any scientific definitions or any scientific. Basically, we want to know, are you depressed or are you not depressed? How do I know that I'm depressed? So let's go straight into the signs of depression. Now, before we go into these signs, let's understand, or let's make a distinction here. There is a distinction between depression and sadness. In our culture, in the Ghanaian culture, most of the time, we tend to say, oh, niraho, udiareho. But there is a big the difference between depression and sadness. And so as we go into the signs of depression, the first sign of that will tell you, or that will give you the hint that maybe you are depressed, is feeling sad, feelings of sadness. If you look at the image there, you see that gentleman sitting there by the wall, feeling so sad. Not only that, feeling sad, feeling empty, and feeling hopeless. So you could be sad, maybe because you failed an exam, or maybe you were looking for something and you didn't get it, or somebody told you something, somebody insulted you, somebody did something that you didn't like, and so you're sad. But anytime sadness is accompanied with emptiness and a feeling of hopelessness, that is usually the first sign that maybe you are not just sad, but you're depressed. On top of that, if in addition to feeling sad, empty, and hopeless, you begin to lack interest, or you have no interest in anything, or you have no pleasure in the things that were pleasurable for you in the past. For example, you love to read, but all of a sudden you lost interest in reading. You love to go to the park and sit or walk in nature. Now all of a sudden you lost interest in doing that. You love to go to your friends, visit your friends, or you love to go out with your friends to have fun, healthy, clean fun. But all of a sudden you're not interested in it. You love to play basketball or soccer or whatever games you used to like before. All of a sudden you lose interest, or they do not appear pleasurable anymore. If you are going through this, or you feel that you are going through this, that these are signs that you are getting into depression. So you're feeling sad, you're feeling empty, you're feeling hopeless, and then you lost interest. If you're going through that, pay attention, because these could be signs, early signs that you are depressed or you are sliding into depression. And then if in addition to these two, you are losing weight or you're gaining weight without wanting to lose weight, or without planning to gain weight, you're losing or you're gaining weight, that could also be a sign of depression. And then on top of that, if you have difficulty sleeping, you go to bed at night and then you just turn and toss in your bed, and you find it difficult to sleep. Your eyes are open, and then your mind is roaming all around and you can't sleep. You try hard and you can't sleep. That could be a sign of depression. Or maybe you're sleeping too much. You're sleeping too much, excessive amount of sleep. That could also be signs of depression. It is true that we need a lot of good sleep. The average adult, young adult from 18 all the way to 60, 65, we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. The elderly, 65, 70, 71, they tend to need more sleep, because definitely the body needs more rest. And so they need between 8 and 9 hours. So if you are between the ages of 18 or 17, 18, all and up, and then you're sleeping anything past 9 hours a day, that could be a sign of depression. And that is what is referred to as hypersomnia. And then some people, you see, these symptoms, they can be mixed and matched. Some will have some. You don't necessarily have to have all of them. But there are some that have to be there. The first two are almost always present. Feeling sad, empty, and hopeless, lack of interest or pleasure, these two are almost always present when somebody is depressed. Losing weight or gaining weight is not always the present. Some can have it, some cannot, will not. And then not being able to sleep or sleeping too much also some can have it, some will not have it. And then some will have this moving or talking slowly. All of a sudden, you become so slow. And then your friends or your family members look at you and are like, what's going on? It's as if everything about you is slowing down. Your thought processes, how you respond to questions, how you answer people when people ask you, or how you explain things. And when you're trying to tell somebody something, the way your recollection, your memory, everything slows down. It's as if you are becoming dumb, even though you are not. If you begin to see these signs, these are signs of depression. Number 6, fatigue. Fatigue, where you are always tired. You are always tired. You're chronically tired. That's chronic fatigue syndrome. You're always tired. It doesn't matter how many times you take a nap. It doesn't matter how long you sleep at night. You always wake up in the morning tired and fatigued. So if you add that, being chronically fatigued, to being sad, being depressed, being hopeless, and then you add that to feelings, lack of pleasure, losing interest, these alone could be signs of depression. Usually, there is a manual called the DSM. Right now, we are in the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That is what is used to diagnose depression. So they look at all these symptoms, and then they put them together, and then we look at how long you've had these. If it's just one day, and then the next day you're fine, that's okay. It could happen to anybody. But if these signs and symptoms continue for more than 2 weeks, going into the 3rd week, then we say that now you are actually depressed. Then feeling worthless and guilty. If you get to the point where you feel like you are the worst person in the world, you compare, and then you begin to compare yourself to your friends. And then you think that you are so worthless, and then there's nothing good in you. You are not good at anything. You are the worst of them all. And then you think that everybody around you is better than you. That could also be a sign of depression. And then guilt. Feeling guilty about something. And it's very interesting. The whole symptom of guilt when it relates to depression is sometimes you're guilty and you don't even know why you're guilty or why you're feeling guilty. Some things have happened and you're blaming yourself, or you made a mistake. You have already asked for forgiveness, you have already talked about it, you've already prayed about it, and you're still feeling guilty, and it's making you sad, and it's making you spiral down along the path of depression. So feeling worthless and guilty over a long period of time is also a sign of depression. So if ever you have a guilty feeling that you can never shake off, no matter how hard you try, that is a sign of depression. So now that we're going through this, I'm sure every one of us, you're going through your mind and your heart and asking yourself, have I ever been in a situation like this when I was going through this and I didn't tell anybody, or I didn't do anything about it. If you didn't know, now you know that these are signs of depression, and therefore something has to be done about it. If you're in school or you in church about school or whatever you're doing, even dealing with your friends, reading, or at your workplace, if you find out your concentration is diminishing, you find it difficult to concentrate. And it's going on and on and on. This is usually referred to as brain fog. It's as if there is some smoke going through your brain. And so you find it difficult to string your thoughts together. When you're trying to analyze a text, or you're trying to read something to analyze it, somebody is telling you a story, or somebody is narrating an incident to you, you find it difficult to put the pieces together, and your mind begins to wander and stray. If you have this on a constant basis, that could be a sign of depression. And then the worst of them all, if all these, especially these feelings of hopelessness, lack of desire, worthlessness, feeling guilty all the time, can actually lead to thoughts of death and suicide. Why? Because somebody who feels hopeless feels as if there is no future for them. So a hopeless person, a chronically hopeless person, really has a very bleak view of the future. And so people who have a bleak view of the future think to themselves, and they say to themselves, why, I might as well be out of this world. Why am I here? There's no use of me being here. And so that could lead to thoughts of death and suicide. So these are the signs of depression. So now we know when we say depression, basically we are talking about signs. So forget about all the medical jargon and all the medical whatever. Think about these signs, and then think about them and multiply them by 2 weeks to 3 weeks. If you have these signs chronically for up to that period, my friend, my brother, my sister, you are depressed. All right. Remember what this week, these 3 days, the theme that the elders gave to this theme this week. They called it what? Healthy living. Healthy living. So we are going to find, or we're going to learn techniques and things that we can use so that we can live a healthy life. And some of these techniques can be applicable to depression. And so we are going to now the next one we're going to look at is what brings on these symptoms. What really causes depression? Most of the time when we talk about depression, we just talk about the signs, symptoms, and then we jump straight to, if you're depressed, go see your doctor, go get treated with medication. But the middle part, which is the bigger and the most important part, is what causes it. Because if you know what causes depression, then you will do everything to prevent it. Let me pause here for a second, because this is very, very important that we understand this part. These things that are these signs of depression that we have discussed, they don't happen in a vacuum. They don't just happen. They ride on something. It's like you're building a house, you build a foundation, and then on the foundation, you build your house. So these signs, which come together to help us diagnose depression, they develop after a certain foundation has been established. And those foundations, or that foundation, is what we are going to look at next. Because if we know that, then we can do things. There are things we can do that will help crumble or destroy the foundation. And once the foundation is destroyed, the building cannot be built upon it. So basically what I'm saying is that once we understand what these things are, what the foundations are which cause depression, then we will be able to live our lives in a healthy way, in such a way that we would actually prevent the depression from developing. So that is what we are going to look at next. There is see the Seventh-day Adventist Church, God has really blessed us. But the thing is that, especially as young people, when we are discussing health issues, we don't really take it seriously, because every young person believes that they are invisible. You know, that nothing can beat us. We are invincible, and therefore we will be healthy forever. And so when we hear of high blood pressure or diabetes, we think, oh, that is for the adults, that's for the grown-ups, that's for my dad, our dads, our parents, and our grandparents. It doesn't affect us. And so we don't take a lot of things seriously. But a lot of the problems that our parents and our grandparents develop, they actually start from the youth, from their childhood. So if you don't understand these issues right now, then you will not be able to prevent them. And you can be assured that by the time you're older and you are your parents' age, those problems will also start showing up in your life. So what am I talking about? The research has been conducted, and one of the leading researchers that conducted this particular research, the research is called the hit theory of depression, or the hit hypothesis. It's a hypothesis called the hit hypothesis, and that has developed into the hit theory of depression. And that suggests that there are certain factors, certain things, about 10 of them, or 10 categories of things, which are called the 10 hit categories. And these categories are the major causes of depression. And that when the Bible says that our bodies, God make us, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God made our brain so resilient, so strong, that it is able to take up to 4 of these hits. And it will do well. It will handle 4 of those hits before it breaks down and give way to depression. So let me say this again. There are researchers, and one of the leading researchers who did that is a physician within the Adventist Church called Dr. Ned Nedley. Dr. Ned Nedley led and then they studied thousands of patients, thousands of people going through depression and anxiety treatment. They did the research on them. And then they concluded that there are 10 hit categories, which are the major causes of depression. But the brain is able to take up to 4 hits. And then after the 4th hit, the brain will just give up. It will be too beaten that it will give up, and then depression will set in. So if you understand what these 10 hits are, you can do things or live your life in such a way that you prevent these 10 hits from hitting you, from hitting your brain, so that you prevent depression. So what are these 10 hits? Hit number 1 is the genetic hit factor. So what are these? Now you know the symptoms of depression. You know what it means to be depressed. We've gone through them. Being sad, feeling hopeless, feeling empty, lack of pleasure, lack of interest, low energy or fatigue, suicidal ideations, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, gaining weight that you don't want to gain, losing weight that you don't want to lose. We know all these things, hopelessness, and then feeling like you want to die or you want to leave this world. We know all this. So Think back and look in your parents. If your parents have gone through a period like that, even if they have not been officially diagnosed with depression, if you've seen some of these symptoms or these signs in any of your parents, there's a high probability that you have a genetic tendency, a genetic hit factor of depression. Or if there has been an official diagnosis, think of a history of depression or suicide in a first degree relative, your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters. A diagnosis of depression, family history, or unfortunately, suicide. If any of that is true, then you have a genetic hit factor. Remember, our brains can take 4 hits. So maybe you are asking me, you're saying, oh, but doc, if I have a genetic factor, what can I do about it? There's nothing I can do about it. Yes, there's nothing you can do. But that is just 1 out of 10 hit categories. So even if you can't do anything about that, the other categories, you can do a lot about those that will mitigate, that will prevent, or that will overshadow the genetic hit factor. So that's number 1. Number 2 is developmental hit factor. What does that mean? That means, 1, especially in women, the research has shown that early puberty in girls. So if you're a girl and you have a menstrual cycle, you start your menstruation early, somewhere around 11 years or younger, that is a hit category for future depression. So if you are here, you're listening to me, and you are a female, and you had your menstrual cycle, you started menstruating at 11 or younger, watch out. That is a hit category. That's a hit factor. So it means that now that you know that if you don't do certain things right, there is a tendency of developing or going down or becoming depressed in the future. And then also a history of depression in adolescence. So this developmental one, if you are now an adult, but you had a history of depression when you were young, then that's a big hit factor that you are going to have depression as an adult later in life if you are not careful. And then also, we are talking about developmental. If you were not raised by both your parents, growing up, developing, if you were not raised by both your parents, your father and your mother, for any reason, either you grew up in a single parent home or whatever, for any whatever reason, if you were not raised by both of your parents, the research shows that children like that have a developmental hit factor to develop depression in the future. So it means if you know, you can work at it to prevent that from developing. And then we're still on the developmental hit factors. Another one is sexual abuse. If any young person has had any sexual abuse, and we know such individuals, we have to go to their aid. We have to do everything to help rehabilitate them, to help them counseling, whatever we need to do, we have to do it. Because sometimes as Ghanaians, we tend to gloss over these things. Sometimes because of shame or family honor, we tend to cover some of these things. Please, let's not cover them. Let's do everything. If we know somebody who has had that, bring all the forces together to help them. Because if they don't get over that, and then we sort of push it under the rug, it will come back to haunt them. It is a serious developmental hit factor for future depression. And then sadly, being raised or living with someone who is an alcoholic or a drug addict. That is also a hit factor. So all these hit factors, as I said before, all these hit factors they have the solution within them, with the exception of the genetic and the developmental, having your menses at 11, which we don't have control over. Most of them, as you see the hit factor, there is a solution in there, and especially with the lifestyle. So what is a lifestyle hit factor for depression? And this one, number one, is not being on a regular aerobic exercise routine, which means that you don't have a program to have to exercise every day, not lifting weights. That is weight lifting or muscle building. We're talking about aerobic exercise, the type of exercise that will stimulate blood flow to the brain. That will stimulate blood flow to the brain, and that will stimulate the production of certain chemicals that make us feel good, that make our mood stable. Chemicals like dopamine, like serotonin, like what you call it, GABA. So GABA, dopamine, serotonin, and all those good chemicals that calm us down and make us feel good. Those chemicals are stimulated and they are produced when we exercise aerobically, walking, running, jump roping, riding a bike, running on a treadmill, any of those exercises that will make you sweat and that will raise your heartbeat. Any of those. And the research looking at the hit categories says that those who don't do these exercises regularly have a hit factor for developing depression down the line. So if you're listening to me and you are young or you are an adult, young adult, and you sit, your job is to sit all the time, you always sit, and you don't exercise, you have a hit factor for developing depression. So start going out. And then not being exposed to sunshine, daylight exposure. Not being exposed to daylight. So you're always indoors. A lot of us young people are always in our rooms with our laptops, with our tablets, with our phone, always indoors. If you're doing that, you are actually building the foundation for depression down the line. So you have to get out and make it a point to get out of your room every day. Get out, go get some sunlight exposure. Be exposed to daylight. Even if there is no sun there, if it's not sunny, the fact that you're getting exposed to daylight by itself is enough to sort of break the foundation that not having exercise will build. Because if you go out and you're exposed to daylight, the daylight goes through your eyes and it stimulates your brain to produce a chemical called melatonin at night when you sleep. And that melatonin helps with our sleep and our mood regulation. So if you're always in a dark room or in a dark place and you're not exposed to daylight, your body doesn't get that stimulus and therefore it doesn't make melatonin properly. And if you don't make melatonin or you don't synthesize melatonin, you are not going to sleep well and your mood is going to be unstable. That is the first step towards developing depression. And then also, if you don't get out to breathe fresh air, you're always indoors or always working indoors. If you're not inside the house, you are inside your car. From your car to the office or to your job, you're indoors. From your job to your car, and then from your car to your home, you're always indoors. You don't get fresh air, you don't get fresh sunlight or daylight exposure. That is a serious hit factor for depression. You have to do something about it. The fourth is the circadian rhythm hit factor. What is the circadian rhythm hit factor? The circadian rhythm is the routine that our body follows. So the circadian rhythm is the rhythm of the sun, when the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening. And our life is supposed to follow that. So what that means is that we wake up in the morning, we do our activities, we work, and then in the night we sort of we go that way, and then in the night we wind down and we go to bed. We rise with the sun and we set with the sun. That is the circadian rhythm. And that really factors into how much sleep we get. And this circadian rhythm is actually talking about three main things: rising with the sun, setting with the sun. It means that you have regular hours of waking up and regular hours of going to bed, and then regular hours of eating and regular hours of not eating. So your eating and periods when you're eating and periods when you are not eating should be regularized. The body likes to follow that rhythm. So if your life is all over the place, you don't have time to wake up, you don't have time to go to bed, you wake up any day, anytime you like, especially now that school is over, and then most of you are home from college or from high school or from middle school or wherever. You sleep and wake up anytime, and then you eat and you not eat anything, disturbing your circadian rhythm. Those are serious hit factors for developing depression. And so you have to really, really seriously take it into account. And then the thing about the circadian rhythm when it comes to sleep is if you're sleeping less than 6 hours or more than 9 hours, that is a circadian rhythm disruption. You are disorganizing your circadian rhythm, and that builds a foundation for developing depression. And a lot of the young people today, I am not a psychiatrist, but the type of medicine I practice, I do almost everything. I see a lot of patients who have gone through the medical system for many years, taking a lot of medications, done all kinds of procedures and all kinds of treatments, and nothing seems to work, and they come. I see a lot of patients like that. And I can tell you that among the young people who have depression and anxiety that I see, 80 to 90%, I haven't really done the scientific study, but if I just try to remember my patients and I think through them, 80 to 90% of them don't sleep enough. They're getting 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours maximum of sleep. And even that, they are not getting it when they should get it within the circadian rhythm. They are going to bed somewhere around 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and then they're waking up at 7 or 8. Or they're going to bed at 4 a.m. and then they sleep all the way till 9 or 10. So their sleep is all over the map. And that is one thing I see very, very often among my young people with depression and anxiety. So this is a very, very serious. The circadian rhythm right now among the young people is one of the leading causes of depression. Not sleeping enough, not eating enough, and not eating at the right time, not sleeping at the right time, and waking up at the wrong time. And on that circadian rhythm disturbance, one other factor that makes it even worse is when on top of not sleeping and not eating well, you mix in sensory, what is referred to as sensory hyperstimulation. What is that? That is, you're always on the phone. You're always on the phone, or you're always on the tablet, or you're always on your computer, or you're always watching a screen, one screen or the other. Then your senses, your sensory, your nerves, your brain, the stimulation becomes too much. It's hyper-stimulated. And so it starts with that stimulation, sensory hyperstimulation, and it goes into what is referred to as sensory overdrive. And when your brain goes into sensory overdrive, it is like an engine, or even your laptop. If you turn your laptop on, the modern laptops do very well. The older laptops, if it's on for a long time and you touch it, at the bottom, it becomes hot. It gets hot. It's like the engine is running so hot. Same thing. If you get sensory hyperstimulation, you're always on a screen or a computer or a tablet, you're getting bombarded, your brain cells, your senses are getting bombarded with all these stimulants from the screen, then it will become, it will go into sensory overdrive. And when it goes there, it's as if your brain is becoming hot. When that happens, you are a very, very, very short step away from depression. And so, young people, you have to be very, very, you have to take this part very, very seriously. And then the circadian rhythm, then the next one is addiction. Addiction hit category. So you see here, there are so many things we can do. The lifestyle, the circadian rhythm, the addiction. Addiction is the use of alcohol, cigarette, tobacco, caffeine, drinking coffee. A lot of us young people these days drink coffee. And we think that it's okay. You know, the industry will not tell you that. But if you have worked in science or chemical laboratory before, I have worked in industrial chemical laboratory before. Caffeine, pure caffeine, is actually put in a bottle in the chemical lab, and it's actually labeled with the skull and the crossbones, like poison. You know, that is a symbol of poison, the skull and the crossbones, like that. Caffeine in a lab, a chemical lab, is labeled with the skull and crossbones. It's poison. It can kill you because it can cause serious palpitations and send your heart into overdrive, and it can kill you. And yet we sell it, we drink it so much that we think, a lot of us think that caffeine, oh, if I get a small cup of my coffee, what's the problem with it? A lot of us, the problems that we face today, young people, is because a lot of us are drinking too much caffeine, or we're actually drinking caffeine. Unfortunately, a lot of us are actually drinking alcohol. Some are smoking marijuana or weed. A lot of us, believe it or not. And these are all hit factors for depression. So if you know and you avoid these, you removed a hit factor right there. Number 6, nutrition. A lot of us young people don't eat well at all. We eat junk food, we eat processed food. I'll talk about that later within the week, maybe, yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow, God willing, I'll go into that. I'll go into some what do you call it, specific aspects of how we are killing ourselves, how we are digging our own graves with our forks and knives. We'll go into it tomorrow. But for now, a lot of us don't eat well. We eat junk food, we eat processed food. We are drinking toxic stuff. And because of that, our diet, if your diet doesn't look like this, your diet doesn't grow on a tree or it doesn't come from the ground, then your diet is low in a chemical or an amino acid called tryptophan. And tryptophan, we need that to make a lot of the feel-good hormones that I talked about, the serotonins and the dopamines and the GABAs and all those. We need tryptophan to make these chemicals. And if you're not eating enough fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, you're not eating like God intended for us to eat, you're lacking tryptophan. And then your diet doesn't supply the building blocks to make these chemicals, and that is a big hit factor for depression. Also, if you're not getting omega-3, that's what the research showed. A lot of the people who were depressed with this nutrition hit factor, they don't get enough tryptophan, they are low in omega-3 fats, they are low in folic acid. Folic acid comes from leaves, dark green leaves or foliage. It comes from greens. Low in vitamin B vitamins. All the B vitamins come from plants. Plants, grains, fruits, vegetables, that's where they come from. So in addition to the diet being low in tryptophan, omega-3s, B vitamins and all these, the diets are high in cholesterol, saturated fat, sugar, and toxins. And this is the biggest hit category among young people of today. They don't sleep well. We've already discussed that. they are with the screen getting hyper stimulation and with the sensory overdrive. Their circadian rhythm is all messed up. And on top of that, they are not eating well. So these are the hit categories. And then also, a lot of young people are worried about weight. And so some people actually don't even want to eat at all. And therefore, they go into anorexia, or they intentionally lose weight. They go on all kinds of fad diets to lose weight. And that is one hit category for depression. The next one is toxins. Toxins are chemical toxins, heavy metal toxins like lead, mercury, arsenic, bismuth, and all of these other toxins. How do we get exposed to this? If you are drinking a lot of those drinks that we drink, a lot of those energy drinks and a lot of those processed foods that we are eating, and a lot of those drinks, they contain toxins. Did you know that there are a lot of toxins that are allowed in our food? A lot of toxins are allowed in our food. It's legal. That is what I'm trying to tell you, is that if you buy processed food from outside, fast food, there are certain levels of toxins that are permissible by law. The law allows them to have a small amount of this toxin. But if something is a toxin, it's a toxin. You see, what they base their argument on is that I'm not going to eat a lot of it, so it's not going to kill me. Because if I eat it now, I'm not going to die today. But most young people eat a lot of these things over and over and over, day plus day plus day. And there is something in biology or in health called biological or biologic magnification. What it means is that if you're eating something this small that has a toxin in it, but you eat many of that small thing, eventually those small bits of toxins, they add up and they magnify, and then they can cause trouble in your body. That, they won't tell you that. But if you look at it and you Google it, it will tell you that, oh yeah, the law allows them to have 5 parts per million of this toxin or this chemical. And a lot of things we buy and eat and drink in this country, it's like that, young people. And that is also one of the things that is a hit factor for anxiety and depression. One other thing is that there are certain categories of things that are added to food additives, food coloring, artificial sweetness, and all those things. A lot of those things are what are referred to as neurotoxins. They are chemicals that are toxic. They are poisonous to the brain. And so when they go in and then they become toxic to your brain, they've laid the foundation for depression. So neurotoxicity it's like setting your brain on fire. And when the brain is on fire, it is the same as having that sensory overdrive that I was talking about, or sensory overload. But this time, not from a screen, but from chemicals that are toxic to your brain. And these have been shown to lay the foundation for depression. So if you are a young person, look at these things, and if your goal is to prevent or reverse depression, you can clean your lifestyle. Watch what you drink, watch what you eat, watch what you're putting on your body, on your skin. Some of the toxins we put on our body, the cosmetics, the sprays that we put in our hair, a lot of those are toxic, and then they go into our system, and then they are neurotoxic. They affect our nerves and our brain, and they lay the foundation for depression. Social complicated grief. What is that? That is absence of social support. It is a shame among young people today. Young people today don't know how to make friends. So sometimes you go to church and you see this young person sitting in that corner with their phone by themselves. You see another person sitting there with their tablet by themselves. And then you see 10 young people sitting together, but everybody is sitting in their own corner on their phone. So we are in a society, we are together in a group, but people are still lonely. That is a foundation or a hit foundation, a hit category for depression. So let's learn to socialize. When we go to church, we go to social groups, let's learn to put our devices away and start cultivating the habit of friendship, how to form friendship. Let's learn how to develop friendship again. A lot of young people don't know how to form friendships. A lot of us, the adults, the older ones, we can just walk into any place, go to a foreign country or go to a foreign office, a place, go there, sit down and pick conversation with anybody and start talking as if we've known each other for years. Because growing up, our generation learned the art of friendship or making friends. These days, young people, you don't have that. It is an art to be learned. So please learn it, because if you do, it is going to help you prevent depression. Because the research has shown that that is one of the major hit categories of depression. And then what is referred to as complicated grief. Complicated grief is when somebody is sad for a long time. You know, they lose a loved one and then they are sad for a long time, and then they cry and cry and cry and cry. That is a factor for depression. And then also the social, among the social, so absence of social support, not having groups, negative or stressful life events, feeling that you belong to a low social class, and then kids who are raised by their grandparents. This is very interesting. Kids who are raised by their grandparents, or kids who have an immediate family member as an alcoholic or a drug addict. All these are social risk factors for depression. If you have a family history of this, be careful and think about that. Medical conditions. Some medical conditions can actually lead to depression. Hepatitis C, head injury, especially the footballers among us who play sports and get concussions and hit yourself. Those can lay the foundation for depression. So be very, very careful. Heart disease, Parkinson's, the women among us, postpartum stress disorder, postpartum or premenstrual tension syndrome, thyroid disease, lupus, and a lot of other diseases can cause depression. So if you have any of these, please work on that. Finally, frontal lobe. This is, I can spend a whole day on this frontal lobe alone. The frontal lobe is the part of our brain, the biggest part of our brain that controls executive functions. Wisdom, executive functions, and things that we do. And that part, if it is not functioning properly, it is the biggest hit brain-wise for depression. And what are those? One, eating a low carbohydrate diet can affect the frontal lobe function. And so those of you who are into high fat, high protein, low carb diet because you want to lose weight, you are building the foundation for depression down the line. Being on a high meat, high cheese diet, lots of rich, fried, processed foods, a lot of TV, watching TVs a lot, being addictive to TV, movies, entertainment, internet addiction, any form of addiction affects the frontal lobe, because all forms of addiction suppresses the frontal lobe and elevates a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And that anytime the frontal lobe is suppressed, your emotions take over and you become very, your mood becomes very fragile and weak, and it is a hit factor for depression. So we have to watch that. So these are the 10 hit factors. Because of time, I'm going to wrap up so that will end. But if you have seen this, then it means that you know how to prevent the depression and you know how to reverse them. Let me go back quickly. Here they are: genetics, developmental, lifestyle, circadian rhythm, addiction, nutrition, toxic effects, social or complicated grief, medical conditions, and frontal lobe disorder. All right, finally, what do we do? In addition to taking care of those hits, the first powerful strategy to defeat depression and to reverse it and prevent it is regularity. Remember that circadian rhythm thing that I was talking about? It's very, very important. We have to develop a certain regularity. Our bodies are made to run best on a schedule. So set times, go to bed and to rise up, to eat and to exercise. And always try to go out regularly to get fresh air and to get sun exposure. If you're doing that, that's 1/3 of the battle. Seriously, it sounds very simple. It sounds very, simplistic, but it is very, very powerful. If you want to prevent or beat depression, work on your circadian rhythm. Regular time to go to bed, regular time to rise up, regular times to eat, regular periods to go exercise, regular time to go out and get fresh air and to get sunlight, daylight exposure. If you do that, more than 1/3 or almost half of the battle of depression is won. And then as you do that, the regularity, most important part is that you have to try to go to bed before 10 p.m. so that you can get at least 2 hours before midnight of sleep. Because all those chemicals that I was mentioning, the dopamines and the serotonins and the GABA, all those and the melatonins, those are the synthesis is more efficient before midnight. After midnight, the circadian rhythm cycle has ended. The sun is about to rise, so the next day is about to begin. So you miss out on the synthesis of these chemicals, which will prevent and help you beat depression. And that is why regularity is important. And remember to go to bed before 10. And then number 2, overcoming addictions. Whether it is smoking, drinking, sexual activity, it is a shame. A lot of our young people are addicted to pornography. And pornography addiction suppresses the frontal lobe and elevates the hypothalamus, and that leads to depression. And a lot of our young people, because this is young people, I told you, I'm going to be frank with you. A lot of us young people, in addition to being addicted to pornography, are also addicted to self-stimulation. A lot of them, they masturbate, the men, and a lot of the females, they stimulate themselves sexually. All of that will lead to sex addiction. So somebody will say, but I don't conduct in sexual activity. If you're doing any of that, you are addicted to sexual activity. And that is one of the leading causes of a frontal lobe suppression, which can lead to depression down the line. So overcome these by God's grace, and that is where the church comes in. You take the church seriously. Everything you learn in the church, take them seriously, and God will give you victory over addictions. And then the third, there's something called Christian cognitive behavior therapy or Bible therapy. You know, in psychology, there's something called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where the whole idea of cognitive behavior therapy is that most of anxiety and depression develops as a result of faulty thinking. Our thinking is faulty because we are thinking of something that is scary or something that we are afraid of or something that is worth. For example, you think that you are the most hopeless person, you are the most worthless person in the world, when you are not. When you are very, very beautiful, you are very smart, you're very intelligent, you have everything you need. But somehow you believe that because somebody looked at you a certain way, all of a sudden you are the ugliest, you are the most useless. If you're thinking that way, CBT or cognitive behavior therapy helps you to reform your thinking. And that is what the Bible or Christian cognitive behavior therapy is able to do. It is able to be based on Romans chapter 12, verse 2, where it says that be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So if you go into that, go into the Bible, you go into the Psalms, then we have a lot of therapy nuggets there that will help you sort of reset your thinking and reset your mind so that your thinking will be in line with reality. And this, if you're able to do that, guess what? You will actually prevent depression, and you will be able to reverse it. Think in terms of the hit categories and look in your life which categories do you have? Remember, our brain is able to take 4 hits. After 4 hits, to give up. That's what the research says. So work through those hits, and you will prevent and reverse depression. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 6, it says, in all your ways acknowledge God, and he will direct your paths. If you are able to do this, anxiety, depression will be something that you will be able to beat. So I will end here. Thank you for your attention. And we are going to continue tomorrow, where tomorrow we will go into real eating and what eating can do to us, the wrong and the right way of eating. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really packed, very informative, Dr. Martin. I know it's always a blessing when you give presentations. So I'm really glad that I was able to partake in today's presentation and to be able to hear what you have for us today. Folks, we have 15 minutes, and as young people, we want to keep to our time. So it is now time for our questions and any contributions we may have towards the presentation. So you could unmute yourself, or you could raise your digital hand, and I will give you a chance for you to ask your question. If you've not heard anything today, remember that Dr. Martin said we need to sleep before 12. That's something that I know I'm going to have to work on. And I know a lot of us fall into that category as well. So thank you so much for the presentation. Any questions, any contributions? We have the chance to be able to ask those questions now. I'm looking. Okay. I guess we are all going to ponder on what Dr. Martin has shared with us. And I know that tomorrow we'll most likely have a question. But before that, maybe I could ask a question, and hopefully that could make it easier for others to join as well. I was taking a couple of notes, and I know you did mention Dr. Martin has shared with us. Okay. I don't know who that was, but maybe they'll come back on and they can ask you a question. I know you did give us the 10 things that we need to look or we have to be careful of. But genes, genetics, that's something that we don't really have control over. So can you just go a bit in depth as to why we have to be mindful of that? Because I mean, if it's in my genes, it's in my genes. But what are some of the things that we could do in that regards, please?
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you asked. So when the Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, sometimes it's kind of difficult to really understand what that really means. But in simple terms, as far as healthy living or health and wellness is concerned, being fearfully and wonderfully made, one way in which we are fearfully and wonderfully made is God put a lot of redundancy systems in our body. What that means is that our body has more than one way of doing things. So if the body wants to go in this direction, and then there's an obstacle here, God put it in such things in our body that the body will now find a way, an alternative route to go in this direction, so that our body will survive and so that we will do well. And so part of that redundancy system is something that is called neuroplasticity. That is what it means, is that our brain is able to adapt our nervous system is able to adapt to unpleasant situations and conditions and make the body survive. So if you have a genetic predisposition to depression, and we know depression is a mental health issue, because of neuroplasticity, if you pay attention to other factors, for example, you decide, okay, I know I have a family history of or genetic family predisposition to be depressed. I am going to focus on taking care of my circadian rhythm very, very well. I'm going to work on my sleep well, and I am going to work on my regularity as far as when I eat and how many hours before midnight I get. That is very crucial. How many hours of sleep before midnight I get. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on trying to get sunlight exposure every day, get fresh air every day. I'm going to exercise every day. If you're doing that, your body will build enough cushion or enough backup to sort of neutralize the effect of the gene. In other words, there is something called, and tomorrow I'll mention a little bit of that. There is something called epigenetic factors. Epigenetics is something that is outside or above the genes. So the genes are like a gun, a loaded gun. You have a pistol with 12 rounds of ammunition. It's already ready. They have the bullets in it. Somebody needs to squeeze it to shoot. That is the gene. So the gene is a preloaded gun, but the factors surrounding it are what's going to squeeze the trigger and make the gun fire. And the research has shown that a lot of these epigenetic factors, and mainly what we eat, what we drink, how we exercise or not exercise, how many hours of sleep we get, and when we sleep. All of these factors come together as the epigenetics, and then they suppress the genetic expression. So that even though you have the gene there, you have so many other factors that are at play. And in this case, if you look at the 10 hit categories, you have 9 others, or let's say 8 others, which can suppress the genetic factor, and therefore you will do very well, even though you have the genetics. So that's how you do it.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. I have one other question, and that is for those who work 11 to 7. You talk about us making sure that we're sleeping early and getting the right amount of sleep. And so the question is, what is your take on those who do the 11 to 7 shift? Oftentimes for Adventists, that's often the shift that those in the health sector tends to have in order for them to be able to have Sabbath, so they can be able to worship, as well as those who wake up pretty early, like at 5 a.m. I'm an early riser. So what are your thoughts on that as well? That was someone else's question.
Okay, I'll start with the last question first. Rising early it's actually a good thing if you sleep early. So rising early has to be matched with sleeping early, because the goal is for you to get, as an adult, at least 7 hours of sleep. That's what the research showed, that anything less than 7. And in fact, they did the research to show that if you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep continuously for 3 days, it is equivalent to being legally drunk. Yeah. So your coordination, your mental alertness, your mental processing time, that is how fast you're able to process information, arrive at a conclusion, and organize and reason and all that, it slows down drastically. And so that's just 3 days. So just imagine if you're doing that times 7, times 30 days, times 365 days. You're actually killing your brain cells, and then eventually you're damning yourself gradually. And so rising early is not a bad thing if you can match it up with sleeping early, which is also a very it's recommended that you sleep early so you can rise early. So that's it. But if you're sleeping late but you're rising early, that is unfortunately not good. You're cheating yourself. And then those who work the night shifts, to be honest with you, it's unfortunate, but there is no way around that. There's no way around that. And I don't know if you have observed, you see that especially people who work night shifts, they are usually very, very tired. They are chronically fatigued. And a lot of them are quick-tempered. They are usually stressed and very anxious. And all of that is because that is a hit category. That's a hit factor. It affects the synthesis of serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. It affects the synthesis of these chemicals and then melatonin. So those four. So serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and melatonin, these four hormones, chemicals, which help with our mood stabilization, helping us sleep and relax. If you work nights, or basically if you don't sleep during the night and you sleep during the day, you shortchange your body in that. You don't make those. And that is the reason why the resistance of people who work nights is not as robust as those who work during the day. So you do the best you can. So that is the thing. So if that is your lot and you have no choice but to work night shift, you do the best you can so that all the other hit categories that you can modify, you modify those by making sure that when you come home, you try and create artificial darkness in your room. Find dark, very, very dark curtains so that your brain somehow will be deceived slightly that it's dark, it's night, and then make the room cool. So it should be cool, dark, and quiet. And that way you'll be able to sleep a little. And then sort of eat well. So you try and eat well and try to exercise, get aerobic exercise, you get all of that. So if you do all of that, those will help mitigate your lack of sleep at night a little bit. And on those days that you don't work nights, try and sleep at night. Don't say that, oh yeah, I don't work nights, so I'm just going to stay awake and sleep in the morning. No. Try and so at least your body can get a little bit of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the questions, and thank everyone for staying until the end. We appreciate each and every one. Please do invite a friend, because I know the topics for tomorrow and Friday are going to be just as impactful as today's is. So please do invite somebody. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Health is very important at the end of the day, right? So we want to make sure that our friends also benefit from this presentation. So once again, thank you, Dr. Martin, for leading this seminar today. We will ask that all the youth leaders should wait after we're done with the service. Pastor Ben will like to meet with us. And just a quick announcement. Pastor Ben, when you're ready, can you please give us our closing prayer, please?
Well, Sister Jesse, thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Obidenfi, for always blessing us with the knowledge God has given you. Our greetings to Sister Success and for the support, and also the rest of the family. For all those that joined, God bless you and thank you for joining. Let's say a prayer before we leave. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this privilege, also especially your protection throughout the day, bringing us to this end, and also for the knowledge that Doctor has impacted onto us. It is a joy to hear all these things, but Father, sometimes it is good in our ears, but difficult to practice. Help us that these will not be just organizing programs, but we put them into effective use, and therefore we'll take good care of ourselves. You say our body is a temple. Help us to decorate it very well. Help us to clean it very well. Help us to be careful what we put in and how we put it, what we put it into. Tonight, Lord, as we depart, may your presence be with each one of us. Let angels watch over us through the night as we rise up in strength, in vigor, and also in your spirit. Bless us all and continue to be with us. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.